Well, good afternoon and welcome to another video with a guy and his projects. Today we are working on my wife's minivan again. This is a 2006 Chrysler Town And Country, which is very similar to the Dodge Caravan and other Town and Countries from years 2001 to 2007. So this should be pretty much applicable to anything you're doing in there, that range. What we're doing today is we're replacing the air conditioning compressor, the AC compressor. It's got a bad bearing squeal, so it's still cooling, but it don't sound good while it's doing it. So we're going to get that replaced. We're going to pull it out, put a new one in, recharge it, and rock on. So this is Arizona. Air conditioning is very important. Not so much to remove humidity, just to cool down the frickin' air. So I'm going to show you every step except two of them. I'm not going to show you how to recover the refrigerant, because if you have the ability to do that properly, then you don't need to watch this video. If you don't have the ability to do it properly, then you need to take it to your service technician to have them remove the refrigerant, okay? That's where I stand on that, so that's what you're not going to see. You're also not going to see me fill the refrigerant back up. It's not as simple as It's not always as simple as a can from AutoZone. So again, if you have the ability to do it properly, then you don't need to watch the video. And if you don't have the ability to do it properly, then go ahead and take it to your technician to have them fill it up. So I'm going to show you everything else though. What we're going to do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do some extra steps that you don't have to do, only because there's no room to get my hands and camera in there, so I got to remove some other stuff to get the camera. We're going to take out the alternator. You don't need to do it, and actually it makes it much more difficult to do this whole process if you do take out the alternator, unless you also take out the EGR valve. Which, I mean, at this point you might as well replace it anyway, so if you're doing that, go for it. Take out the EGR valve, take out the alternator, and then take out the compressor, and you have to really spend very little time under the vehicle that way. But all you need to do is, you don't have to do either one of those to get the compressor out. You can do it all without taking the alternator. What we do have to do though is we're going to jack this side of the van up, we're going to take the tire off, and then we're going to take the little plastic cover that just protects the belt and get that off, and then we're going to loosen and remove the serpentine belt off of the compressor. That's what you're going to do. I'm also going to take it off the alternator, not a big deal, and then you can access your compressor and everything from below and above. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to do it. We'll vacuum out the system, fill it back up, take it for a test drive. So, boom, yeah, let's do it. Step one is grab your 10mm socket, and you're going to pop the bolt loose holding the air housing, and come over here and get rid of this hose clamp holding your air intake onto your throttle body. You're going to take this hose off, pop it off, and over here for your filter housing you have two clamps, one there and one towards the cab underneath the hose, or whatever you want to call it. You're then just going to wiggle it off of the throttle body, pull it up, and you have some electrical connected. That's going to come off here super easy. Just a screwdriver to pop the safety tab and press and pull just like normal. This is the little safety tab, that red thing you just push out of the way. Alright, grab this assembly, move it. This you already unbolted, so now you can just pop it out of the grommet from down below. Just comes straight up. So don't forget about this. This is your dryer, filter dryer, accumulator, whatever the heck you want to call it. We're going to come back to that later. Just know it's there. Pull your tire off. Jack your vehicle up. Put your jack stand down there in a solid position where your vehicle's not going to come crashing down on you later. And move your jack out of the way. Alright, so behind the tire there's these little poppets for this little tiny piece of plastic. It's pretty much just protecting the belt and things from road debris that your tire kicks up. These all just pop out. There's 3 of them holding it to the body of the vehicle and one you saw that we started with, just holding it in place with another piece of plastic. And that's what those look like. Pain in the butt, but they work good. Now that's out, you can see your AC compressor right here all the way up in front and bottom. And that's what we gotta get out. This is your tensioner up here. Just need a 1/2-inch socket or a serpentine belt removal tool to release the tension so we can remove the belt from the compressor. I have the serpentine belt removal tool because it was kind of squishy up there. You might have a hard time getting a ratchet, so just put that in there. It comes as 2 pieces because it's super long, so sometimes you need a different angle. Like this works out great. Go ahead and pull that tensioner counterclockwise, and that'll release tension on the belt. You can then grab and move the belt off the AC compressor. You can then release tension and carry on. So up on the top of the van, this is your alternator. You're going to take your belt off of there as well because I'm going to remove the alternator with this 15mm socket. You do not have to remove the alternator. I'm just doing this to give me room to have a camera down there so you can see how we're removing the compressor. If you are removing the alternator though, there's these 2 bolts. There's one on top of the other. It's kind of hard to tell where we're looking. We're looking from the passenger side right there. This is from down below, right on top of the compressor. So that's your top one. And all 3 bolts look the same, so it doesn't really matter if you mix them up. That's your bottom one, accessible from above or below. And before we start getting into the electrical stuff, disconnect the negative cable on your vehicle, just for safety's sake. Takes a second, could save a pain in the butt. This is your EGR valve electrical connection. Pull the tab out, remove the connector. This is just to gain clearance. This is your electrical for your alternator. That's held on by a nut. And just go ahead and pull that off. And then down here is your electrical connection for your alternator. And we're going to gain some room by removing the boot for the spark plug. I got this bottom bolt for the alternator using 2 box wrenches. If you have smaller hands, you can just use your hands. But do what you got to do to get them out. They're all 15mm. Alright, so now that that's free, we can move it. And these are your AC lines on the compressor. We're going to take those off with your 13mm. I ended up using a deep socket with a swivel, and I believe that's a 10-inch extension, but it's kind of a pain in the butt to get to, but it worked. Alright, once you get those nuts off holding the AC lines on, you can go ahead and just pop them out. Move them out of the way. They're held on by hoses, so they are flexible. Okay, so now you're going to do the electrical connection on the compressor. In Chrysler's geniusness, they put the electrical plug upside down so it's easier to get from below. And back to your 15mm socket, and this is going to have 4 bolts holding it in, 2 on the side by the passenger tire, and then 2 up front facing the radiator. The 2 by the tire are nuts, held the compressors resting on studs. So just pull those off over here. This is your bottom one in front of the radiator or behind. That's just a 15 or 13mm as well. And that's a bolt. It's a very long bolt. Sorry for jumping back and forth. Just the way I happen to work on it. This is your upper one. This is right above the lower bolt for the compressor. That comes out as well. You kind of have to angle it down towards the ground to get it completely out, or it runs into the fan. So now your compressor is free. You pull it off the studs, and we do that wiggle, wiggle, wiggle action trying to get it out of here. It's easier to push it back towards the center of the van, turn the pulley up towards the sky, and drop it right on down. Just like so. And just watch your AC lines, make sure they're not getting caught up, as mine did. Alright, so now we always compare our old parts with our new parts. Some of you, depending on your new compressor, might have to remove these studs and put them on the new ones. Verify your holes all line up and match up, and that your pulley grooves have the same amount of grooves. Ours matches. Come back down underneath your AC lines. We're going to go ahead and replace these O-rings. We're going to do it now while the lines are accessible a little bit easier. My compressor did not come with new O-rings. I just happen to have a stash. And we're going to use PAG 46 oil, which is the equivalent to what this van is supposed to take that I can't find anywhere on the shelf. So just take some oil, coat that O-ring. Watch your eyeballs when you fling these off, because when you fling it, they can go flying. Again, coat your new O-ring in PAG 46, or if you can find the correct oil, use that. New compressor goes up just like the other one came down, pulley to the sky, in between the oil filter and the coolant hose. And you just gotta do that wiggle, wiggle, wiggle action. Just like so. I'm going to slide it up on the studs, get your nuts on each of the upper and lower studs. And quite honestly, you're already done with the hard part, guys. If you've gotten this far, I mean, you're home free. That lower bolt, again, slide in. You have to angle it from down below. And same with the upper bolt, you have to angle it in from down below. You can't, I couldn't get it in from above, so easier just to go from the bottom. Slide that in. Once you have all your mounting bolts tightened up, you can take these protective plugs out and put your lines on. And snug them on down. You can't really mix these two lines up. They're only going to land one way, so don't worry about it too much. And they're opposites, so there's not really any way you're going to get them on backwards. Worth mentioning, my compressor did come with the correct amount of oil in it for my vehicle, pre-loaded. If yours didn't, you would need to add some oil into the compressor. Read the instructions that came with your compressor. You can now plug your electrical back into your compressor, just like you took it off. Just slide it on, put the safety back on if you want to hate yourself later, or you can just leave that safety latch off. Your discretion. They put them there for a reason, but at the same time, I have never had one come back off. So your alternator, we went ahead and remounted your alternator, same way it came off as well. Go ahead and plug that in. Connect your electrical, get it nice and tight. And then your EGR valve. This tab is super easy to get to, so I'll latch it in. Don't forget to put your coil back on, or your spark plug boot. Get that on. Now we're going to take off your receiver dryer, accumulator, whatever you want to call it. That's an 8mm wrench or socket. 2 bolts, super easy. Pull that out. Again, they're the exact same bolts, so don't worry about mixing them up too much. These O-rings on these lines are actually different. They're not your standard typical round O-rings, so if your filter dryer didn't come with them, you're gonna have to buy them special. I was not prepared for that. and so I did not actually replace these rings. I will have to do that sometime later, but for now the old ones are currently holding as of me narrating this video. That's your old dryer. Now you're going to take your new one, slide it in place. And that black plastic housing ended up snapping on me when I pulled the old one out. It was stuck in there pretty good, and the plastic was hard and brittle, and it just snapped. I did not replace it or anything. The new one sits in there just fine, so I am not having any issues. You can now tighten down those lines. Boom, bada bing. Hook up your gauges if you got a vacuum set. If not, you can skip this part. We're going to vacuum out the system before we fill it up. So we're going to get that working right now because it's going to vacuum for a full 45 minutes to an hour. Just open up your gauge set and let her vacuum. So now while we're waiting on that, we'll come down, we'll hook our belt back up. Just get it back up over the alternator and pull that tensioner counterclockwise again. It should be pretty stiff to pull. If it's super loose, you probably want to look at replacing your alternator. Or not your alternator, I'm sorry, your tensioner. Make sure your belt's lined up on all the grooves and all the pulleys, and you should be good to go on the downside. I did not put the plastic cover back on because I kind of forgot about it, to be totally honest. So don't forget to put that plastic cover back on. And moving back up the top, we're going to put your filter box back in. You push it down into the grommet after you get it all nice and lined up. I make that part look a lot harder than it actually is. Put your bolt back in. Voila. Your air filter. Good chance, or a good opportunity to go ahead and replace it. Your top of your air box and your ductwork, get it over the throttle body and just line it all back up just like you took it off. Once you get that in place, you can take this tape off that we covered just to keep it clean inside the intake there. Put your hose back on, tighten down your hose clamp on your throttle body. Plug your electrical back in, don't forget that part, or you get a check engine code. And then put your battery back on. Look at that, guys, you're pretty much done. Tighten all that down to spec. Put your tire back on, and at this point pretty much you're going to take it in and get your local AC guy to fill her up at your auto shop. Alright guys, it's easy as that. Like you saw, you don't have to remove the alternator. If you remove the EGR valve, it would have made it a lot easier for me, but I didn't have a new EGR valve. I didn't have a gasket for it, so I didn't, which means I was sitting there playing with the alternator, moving it around back and forth. It would have been a lot easier just to get rid of the EGR valve so I could remove the alternator. You don't have to do any of that. Everything you saw me do, you can do without removing the alternator. You can access the bolts a little more squishy, but you can for the compressor and everything. So I would recommend just not even dealing with the alternator. Anywho, all that being said, that was an easy project. Actually, one of the more easy I've done. Very little has to come off to get that apart. Very little is involved, so yeah. So I just took it for a test drive right now, and when you're driving on the freeway, it felt good, it felt great, it felt amazing in the van actually. So yeah, if you liked what you saw, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below, or this corner, that corner, I don't know which corner, but hit that subscribe button, leave a positive comment down below, and stay tuned for the next video coming up, which I'm not sure what it is. I know right now for projects going on, I've got the PCV valve on my Nissan Sentra. I've got the, oh, what else do I have? I got a few things. I got the transmission cable for the F250. I got the alternator going to be replaced on this car. I got the serpentine belt going to be replaced on the Nissan Sentra. I've also got the coilovers being replaced on this. I already replaced them. I already have a video, just haven't edited it. I've got the EGR valve replacement, the alternator replacement, the belt replacement, all on this vehicle. There's other projects. There's always projects coming, so stay tuned. We'll see you next time.